Ladies and gentlemen of the Joint Assembly and honored guests, I am proud to present to you the Honorable Henry Dargan McMaster, Governor of South Carolina.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the General Assembly, constitutional officers, and my fellow South Carolinians, I begin tonight by recognizing those South Carolinians in uniform no longer with us, who gave their lives in the line of duty and in service to us all. I'll call the names. Corporal James Eric Chapman of the Johnston Police Department. Trooper Daniel Keith Rebman, Jr. of the South Carolina Highway Patrol. Master Deputy Devin Presley Hodges of the Anderson County Sheriff's Office. Officer Jason Gregory Harris of the Spartanburg Police Department. Detective Michael Robert Doty of the York County Sheriff's Office, and Specialist Javion Shavante Sullivan, United States Army of Fort Mill, who gave his life in Iraq in support of Operation Inherent Resolve. To the families and loved ones of these 6 men, on behalf of all South Carolinians, we share your sadness, we honor their service, and we wish you strength. Thank you. To my wife, Peggy, and my children, Henry and Mary Rogers, and to the members of my cabinet, I thank you for your support. Ladies and gentlemen, our state is strong. Today, we stand at the dawn of a new prosperity in the history of our great country. This is our time. To those generations of South Carolinians who have fought, toiled, and labored, I say thank you. To those of us here tonight who have inherited the richness, beauty, and brilliance of this land and the fruits of our predecessors' talents and imaginations, I say this: let us not hesitate, let us not stumble or stall, but let us act. Let us open our eyes and focus our energies on the vast opportunities which can be ours, knowing yet that though they are vast, they are also fleeting. And to the young ones of today, those born and yet to be born, we here pledge to you now that when our work is done, we will be able to say to you, we have done our best, we have kept the faith, we have accepted the treasures and accomplishments of South Carolina, enhanced them, built upon them, and now we give them to you. May you see our time not as one of petty squabbles, ambitions, or bickering, and not one of favor to friend or punishment to foe, but one of vision, principle, sacrifice, service for you, our children, and your children to come, and theirs. I am confident that in this assembly and others throughout our state, there are men and women of goodwill and determination who can forge the ideas, hopes, and dreams of our people today and the wisdom of the centuries into a force which can lift our state into an era of prosperity, strength, and happiness unlike any we have seen before. So, with the freshness and the promise of this new year, let us begin. In 2017, we announced more than 17,000 new jobs from over 120 economic development projects. with nearly $5 million in new capital investment in South Carolina. In this, we welcome new friends to our South Carolina family through new businesses or expansions. These companies have placed great faith in our people, as we have in them, and some of them are here with us tonight. As I call their names, I'll ask them to stand, and we will recognize them at the end. Representing Samsung, Mr. June So and Mr. Tony Fraley, if you will stand. Representing Volvo, Ms. Katrina Fiording and Ms. Catherine Yale, if you will please stand. Representing Mr. BMW, Mr. Alfred Haas. Mr. Haas will please stand. Representing Magna, Mr. Steve Salvatore and Mrs. Misty Rice, please stand. And representing Harbor Freight Tools, Mr. Robbie Robertson and Mr. David Matthews. Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you to this historic State House. Thank you. Yes, we have a lot to offer in South Carolina. Our port in Charleston will soon be the deepest on the eastern seaboard. Our two inland ports in Dillon and Greer provide unique logistical strength, and we have 3 major research universities and a world-renowned technical college system. But newcomers all tell us the same thing. They tell us it's our people who make the biggest difference. They say that South Carolina is a handshake state. They say it's the only one. They say when someone comes from South Carolina, gives you their word, they keep it. So my word to you, the people of South Carolina, is that I will do whatever it takes to continue the success we see today, to keep and enhance our competitive edge and build for an even better tomorrow. The recent tax reform bill signed by President Trump was a great victory for the American taxpayers and for our economy. Companies have already begun announcing reinvestment and raises for employees. But with the federal government cutting taxes, it's now important than ever for us to do our part. To that end, I recently unveiled my executive budget, which proposes a $2.2 billion tax cut for every South Carolinian. The first year's cut amounts to $139 million. To all the South Carolinians listening tonight, that's $139 million that would have gone to the government and will stay with you instead. Also under my plan, retired veterans, first responders, law officers will never pay state income taxes on their retirement pay again, ever. This tax relief not only enhances their compensation during their retirement years, but also strengthens recruitment and retention. It reaffirms the unwavering commitment of South Carolinians to the people who have chosen to serve. We thank you for your service. Like Presidents Reagan, Kennedy, and now Trump, I believe that low taxes spur economic growth and prosperity. Yet, South Carolina currently has the highest marginal income tax rate in the Southeast, the 12th highest in the nation. 7 states have no income tax at all. Taxes of all kinds at all levels add up little by little, and what they do is smother growth. We must act. We must heed the lessons of history. We must respect the right of the people to their own money for their own purposes according to their own priorities. Today, the nations of the world are transitioning to a new kind of economy. Information, goods, and services are moving with lightning speed. Language is no barrier, and neither is distance. Workers who previously carried toolboxes are now carrying tablets. In South Carolina, our workforce must keep pace with our own success. Despite our low unemployment rate, we still have an estimated 60,000 jobs out there available throughout the state. And that number is expected to grow. And these are good paying jobs. We must invest in our workforce development institutions. Fortunately, we have the talent, vision, and means to do just exactly that. Dr. Tim Hardy is here tonight representing the South Carolina Technical College System, which is the engine of our economic and workforce development. Dr. Hardy, will you please stand and be recognized? We must invest in our workforce development institutions. We should use this magnificent system to the fullest extent. And to that end, I'm calling for the creation of the South Carolina Workforce Partnership. This new initiative will connect businesses with high schools and technical colleges to collaborate on internships, dual credit, and certificate programs for students interested in the skilled trades focused in the rural areas of our state. My budget also increases funding for workforce scholarships and grants so that more students can access the financial resources to obtain certificate and associate's degrees at our technical colleges. Just as we cannot have a thriving economy without an educated workforce, we cannot have a productive educational system without economic growth. They go together. When a school district prospers, the schools in that district prosper. We know that South Carolina has some of the best educators in the country. I have seen them. You have seen them. We have with us tonight the 2017 National Principal of the Year, Dr. Akil Ross from Chapin High School. Dr. Ross represents He is the kind of educator we must have, men and women who are not just good teachers, but good role models as well. And by the way, Dr. Ross is the third such National Principal of the Year that we've had from South Carolina in about a dozen years. We're leading in the country. I recently visited most of the school districts in the Abbeville case. Maybe you have too. One thing is clear to me. The words minimally adequate bear absolutely no relation to the aspirations we have for our children in South Carolina. So what do we want, and what must we do to get there? We want a multifaceted system anchored by traditional public schools which boast the best teachers, principles, and technologies. We want charter schools, all public, to flourish, including those for children with special needs. Parents want vigorous, accountable, innovative school choice. So how do we accomplish all of this? After meeting with educators, parents, and students with this question in mind, I offer these observations for your edification. Number one, poverty. Poverty is the enemy of education. Poverty is the enemy of education. Some of our children, through no fault of their own, live in circumstances so bleak that intellectual stimulation and learning are but fleeting experiences. Ultimately, gainful employment of the parents or adults in the home offers the surest deliverance of that child into educated society. But economic development often comes slowly, and it's easily outpaced by the child's birthdays. So what can we do in the meantime? Good teachers and good principals clearly are the key to success. There is rarely a child in our state who will not or cannot be taught. The key is not trying to pour knowledge in, but rather opening the eyes and imaginations and letting the eagerness and fascination out. A good teacher can do this. We must have the best teachers in the country. Clemson University has a program, Call Me Mister. It works to increase the pool of available teachers and principals from diverse backgrounds. My executive budget invests more for this important initiative. But our work also will require systemic reforms, top to bottom. The Abbeville Court's observations about administrative costs being disproportionate to school size remains both accurate and astute. Spiraling administrative costs have a direct impact on educational outcomes. Consolidating small districts will reduce costs, limit duplication, and put more money and resources where they belong, and that is in the classrooms. A Department of Education study recently identified up to $338 million in savings over 5 years if consolidation efforts are undertaken. We must realize such savings, not only in school districts, but all across state government. Recruiting new jobs and economic investment will do more to improve educational opportunity than simply sending money from Columbia. Yet, students must have the resources to reach their full potential. My executive budget invests in the base student costs for South Carolina's public schools and provides $3.3 million to train new teachers for coding and computer science for classroom instruction in every school in this state. This will help us align our educational system with the technological necessities of this new economy. We must continue to invest in school choice. A robust charter school program allows parents to choose the education opportunities that best suits their children. With the entry of Erskine College as a new charter authorizer, we are expanding choice across the state. My executive budget increases per pupil funding for charter schools and establishes a transportation program to reduce barriers to access. Last year, the House and Senate passed their own versions of legislation which would bring more accountability to our education system by making the superintendent of education a cabinet-level position. The General Assembly has debated this for years. Now you have the legislature before you. Again, I urge you to pass this important legislation this year. We all know that teachers cannot teach and students cannot learn when distracted or threatened. Too often we've seen crime and violence find their way into our classrooms. A safe learning environment can be enhanced by the presence of a certified trained police officer as a shield against disruption and tragedy. My budget provides $5 million for a need-based grant program to place these officers in schools. I ask each member of the General Assembly to work with me to station a trained police officer in every school, in every county, on every campus, all day, every day. We know that prosperity requires law and order. You can't have civilization without law and order. We in South Carolina cannot tolerate lawlessness. That means we must say no to sanctuary cities in South Carolina. Right now, there's no way for the people of South Carolina or anywhere else to know whether local governments are following state and federal immigration laws in South Carolina. Experience shows that a refusal to enforce one law generally reflects a softness in enforcing other criminal laws and ultimately attracts criminal behavior. Our rule is very simple: trust but verify. I want to thank Representatives Bruce Bannister and Senator Rex Rice for introducing bills that would create an enforcement mechanism to register compliance. This legislation will make our position in South Carolina clear. I ask the General Assembly to pass it immediately. We want to keep our people safe and also send a message across the nation that there will be no sanctuary cities in South Carolina. We also face new threats from inside our prisons, and it's because of technology. It's hard to believe the situation in the prisons today. Today's cell phones are so concealable and available that they've revolutionized criminal activity. With cell phones smuggled inside the prison or secretly thrown over the wall, inmates inside and their conspirators on the outside can practice extortion, conduct blackmail, plan and execute hits, operate drug rings, and run any number of fraud schemes. It's as though they never got caught in the first place. Brian Sterling, our director of the Department of Corrections, is leading the national effort to repeal the federal law, which prohibits us from jamming these phone signals. But until we accomplish that, we must take every action, try every idea, and implement any law which will stop these people. I ask for your determined assistance, and I ask for Director Sterling to please stand and be recognized. Another threat that we face comes in pill form. It's hardly recognized by most people. The opioid epidemic is affecting every state in the country. You've read about it. But it's not a typical crime problem. This is a crisis born of human pain and suffering. This is something different. This is something we have not seen before. 54% of the pills on the street come from your neighbor's medicine cabinet in an unused prescription of too many pills. For the last 3 years, we've had more opioid-related deaths in South Carolina than homicides and drunk driving deaths combined. In 2016, this silent hurricane killed 616 people in our state. And it's not just the pills. Addictions intensify from one substance to another. From 2014 to 2015, right here, heroin deaths increased 67%. Since 2015, SLED has seen a more than 700% increase in the number of drug cases involving fentanyl-related compounds. We must take a strong, new, bold approach to this unprecedented threat. It consists of what I call a full court press, including awareness, information, and treatment. Last month, I declared a statewide public health emergency in South Carolina because of opioids. This allows us to bring the full power of the state's emergency management infrastructure, healthcare apparatus, and law enforcement resources to bear as a single team upon the growing epidemic of opioid deaths, addiction, and abuse. A comprehensive informational website has been established. Doctors are now warning their patients that opioids, which make the procedure pain-free, may also make the patient an addict. Usually 5 days' worth of pills is all it takes to produce an addict. Disposal protocols are being established. Our task force is scouring the country for ideas work. Ladies and gentlemen, this is something on which we must get busy. We must solve this crisis in South Carolina. In addition, my executive budget provides more than $10 million for treatment, prevention, and education. I'd like to take a moment to recognize a man who has demonstrated inspirational leadership and courage in challenging this opioid crisis. You know the story. It is Representative Eric Bedingfield. Mr. Bedingfield retired last week after 10 years in the House of Representatives. Today, I had the high honor of presenting him with the Order of the Palmetto on behalf of 5 million grateful South Carolinians for what he's done. But the sentiment bears repeating. Eric, I know I speak for everyone when I say, thank you for your service to the state of South Carolina. Most important function of government is to provide for the safety and security of the people. That extends to all life, born and unborn, young and old. I believe that human life begins at conception. That's why in August, I directed state agencies to stop providing state funds to abortion clinics. The right to life is the most precious of rights and the most fragile. We must never let the right to life be taken for granted. And the other things we can't take for granted. We cannot take for granted our precious natural resources which define and sustain us. From the mountains to the sea. South Carolina's beaches, sea islands, and marshes are the most beautiful in the nation. That's why people come from all over to see them. 29 million people to South Carolina every year, supporting a $20 billion tourism industry. From Little River and Myrtle Beach, Georgetown to Charleston to Hilton Head, Beaufort, and to Fusky Island, our economy and culture depend on a living, pristine coastline. Every municipality along our coast, everyone has voted to oppose drilling and seismic testing, and they are right. With offshore drilling comes the construction of onshore infrastructure. That means refineries, gas storage tanks, maintenance and operating facilities, trucks, traffic, and everything else. We simply have no place to put it. It is incompatible with everything we have and do on our coast. Oil spills, like hurricanes, can disrupt and damage a state's economy. We know we can't stop hurricanes, but we can avoid oil spills. We cannot take a chance. We must do whatever it takes to preserve this economic paradise that we call the beach or the marsh or the coast or the low country. Ladies and gentlemen, we must do whatever it takes because that coastline is made of gold for the people of South Carolina. It is a basic principle that South Carolinians must be able to trust those they elect to represent them. In turn, we must be deserving of that trust. 2 years ago, Governor Haley asked Attorney General Travis Medlock and me to co-chair the Ethics Reform Commission. Our group proposed sweeping reforms, some of which have been implemented, some not. My goal as governor is to see them all implemented. That means a lot of things. It means stronger and expanded investigative authority for the State Ethics Commission to obtain, verify, and investigate campaign finance disclosures and statements of economic interest. It means requiring legislators to recuse themselves from participating when conflicts exist. It means complying with the Freedom of Information Act. Today, the legislature, as you know, is exempted from the Freedom of Information Act request. Ladies and gentlemen, that destroys public confidence in the legislature. These exemptions must end. But as you know, ethics reform doesn't start and stop at the State House. It's a lot bigger than that. It extends to every city hall, county council, and school district. Ironically, these government bodies which are closest to the people conduct business with the least transparency of all. For example, citizens have no way of knowing who is being paid to lobby, to raise their school millage rates, change zoning laws, or to obtain easements on the land across their backyard. I ask you to join me in making sure that those paid to lobby, county council, city council, school boards, or anything else be required to register as lobbyists. You send me the bills to strengthen the public's trust in government, you send them to me, and I will sign them, and we'll make progress. We also must earn the public's trust every day in deciding whether to spend their money. State government can no longer afford to buy, maintain, and repair buildings and vehicles which wear out and depreciate. We should not own many of them in the first place. So, my executive budget requires state agencies to save money by leasing, renting, and consolidating administrative services through the Department of Administration. It establishes a new property management process to provide for maximum efficiency in the use of those facilities we do own and those we lease in the future. A recent report from the department showed that by consolidating IT services alone, we saved over $14 million in 12 months. That's $14 million we could have spent on something else for the people. Another example, or could have given it back to the people. Another example, a year ago, agents at probation, pardon, and parole needed more vehicles. Sometimes they were riding around in three to a car. Well, Director Jerry Adger saw his chance. Instead of buying vehicles, he leased them from the state fleet and was able to get twice as many cars for half the cost. Jerry Adger, stand up and be recognized, please. There's no reason we cannot extend this shared services model across other agencies with similar functions, and that includes human resources, accounts payable, procurement, budgeting, reporting, maintenance, and a lot of others. But here's the point. Let's let the taxpayers keep their money. This session, we also must take further action to address the ongoing crisis in our pension system. We are now facing a $24 billion unfunded liability which threatens our long-term stability. In April, we enacted legislation increasing employee and employer contributions for the South Carolina retirement system and the police officers' retirement system. This was the only way to immediately begin reducing this unfunded liability. Now we must finish that work. I believe we must also close the current defined benefit plan and move to a defined contribution plan for new employees. And as I asked the Joint Committee on Pension Systems Review, we should consider a number of things, including enhanced contributions, which recognize employees' years of service, the elimination of unfunded cost of living adjustments, and raising the age of retirement eligibility. We must maintain our commitment to the many people who rely on our state retirement system. We must protect the taxpayers from bearing the financial burden caused by a delay, and we must do it now before this body adjourns. South Carolina's bright economic future and continued job growth require an abundant supply of clean and affordable energy. Without it, our state is at an economic disadvantage. Santee Cooper and Scanner's decisions to suspend and abandon the construction of 2 nuclear reactors at the V.C. Summer Nuclear Station require us to take action immediately, but carefully. Customers of Santee Cooper and Scanner have already paid billions for this project. Now they face the prospect of being charged for years in the future for reactors which may never be completed. Ladies and gentlemen, this cannot happen. We must carefully assess our situation. We must construct the best possible solution. The customers must either get the reactors or get their money back. On Friday, the Office of Regulatory Staff produced an independent audit which contradicted the bleak scenario painted by SCANA's executives, concluding that SCANA's bankruptcy to be unlikely if the Base Load Review Act is reformed. In light of this information, it is plainly irresponsible to allow SCANA or any prospective purchaser to continue collecting money from customers for this project. Send me a bill that replaces the Base Load Review Act and prevents ratepayers from being charged in the future for the abandoned reactors, and I will sign it. Send me a bill that continues to place the financial burden for the failure on the ratepayers, and I will veto it. Clearly, ladies and gentlemen, it's the interests of the customers must come first. They're buying power from a monopoly that by law can charge them this fee. There's no way out for them unless we take these steps. Unlike SCANA, Santee Cooper has no stockholders to bear part of all of this debt. Santee Cooper is owned by the state. It is currently saddled with $4.3 billion in debt from this project alone, and they have nothing to show for it. It also has another $4 billion in other debt. This huge debt is going to have to be paid, but it certainly won't be paid from the sale of new power from these two unfinished nuclear reactors. Santee Cooper will have no choice but to raise rates on customers to pay this debt. We cannot let this happen. Their largest company, the electric cooperatives, will be required to pay 70% of this for the next 30 years. I submit to you that the only feasible solution suggested so far is the sale of Santee Cooper. There is a legitimate question as to why the state government is still running a power company after 83 years. As you know, I've been meeting with several companies which have expressed serious interest in buying Santee Cooper. Some have made proposals. Its value is well recognized. I have informed all of these interested purchasers that the state will not consider any proposal which saddles the ratepayers or the taxpayers with Santee Cooper's debt. There are powerful market and competitive forces at play here, as well as economic and legal consequences. All of us in this room have to be deliberate and wise. But being deliberate and wise does not mean we have to be tentative. We have to make the best decisions for the people, both now and for generations to come. But I have great confidence in our people and in the future of South Carolina. There are a lot of other things that we have to do, and you're very familiar with them, and you've been working on them. But we're in the right place to do it, ladies and gentlemen. There's not another place on this earth like this one where we are now. We should thank God every day that we have the opportunity to represent these people in this state. And I know there are people out there praying for us every day. They're praying for me, they're praying for you, and I say thank you and keep it up, because we got work to do. We must encourage the spirits of charity and volunteerism among our people, among our organizations, among our institutions, including our houses of worship. Because, ladies and gentlemen, government cannot and should not attempt to meet all the needs of all the people. We must promote and celebrate excellence wherever we find it, whether it's in academics, in industry, in athletics, or in art, because we know that excellence in one thing begets excellence in another. And we must approach our duties not with the goal of managing scarcity, but with the goal of creating abundance, because we can do it. And above all, I ask that we reaffirm our commitment to being smart, innovative, and doing more with less. Let the taxpayers keep more and more of their money. Let us build a state government which is efficient, transparent, and accountable. And let our service be distinguished by wisdom, vision, and steady hands. And as I close, I'm reminded that the Scriptures tell us to be awake, for we know neither the day nor the hour in which the moments of opportunity will come. I believe such moments are here now. I believe this is South Carolina's time. So let us seize this day and each day which follows. Let us recognize that there's no power in a small idea. Let us resolve here now to serve the people of South Carolina in ways uncommon, to build a new prosperity for generations to come, which in their turn they can build upon and which can be recorded as the fulfillment of our highest hopes and duties. And ladies and gentlemen, let us always be proud of South Carolina. May God bless you. May his light shine upon you. May God bless South Carolina. And may God bless these United States of America.